Welcome, welcome everyone. We're so excited to see you. As I had mentioned earlier, as everyone is trickling in, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box. We always love to see who's in the room, not only for ourselves, but also for the others on the call. So again, welcome from Allraise, and thank you for joining us for part one of a part 3 enterprise series. As you all know, today's session will be about business fundamentals, so really business model fundamentals. So really excited about this and to have Judy be joining us. Before we do jump in, again, I'm Marian Arake. I lead Allraise digital events here. So nice to meet you all. Nice to see some familiar names. As some of you may know, Allraise is a nonprofit dedicated to amplifying female voices, accelerating female success, and creating a tech culture where women are leading, shaping, and funding the future. Our events and the volunteers who make them possible are key to building and amplifying the movement that will rewire tech and the venture capital industry while creating allies amongst us. So thank you to all of our partners. We would not be able to do that without them, and our volunteers as well. So we're very lucky to have such a strong team working with us. Again, there are a couple of features of the webinar most of you may know, but there's a chat function. So again, use the chat function to introduce yourselves to others on the call. If you do have questions for Judy throughout the session, please feel free to put it into the Q&A box. It's just a lot easier for us to manage that. And as a reminder, there will be a recording of this webinar for you to access about 24 hours after today. So definitely keep an eye out on our website. And so without further ado, I would love to introduce our speaker today, Judy. Judy is this enterprise SaaS executive, investor, and advisor who has been building and investing in SaaS companies since 2000, when she was recruited to Salesforce as one of the original product managers. This includes 7 early years at Salesforce.com, 7 years consulting exclusively with B2B SaaS companies, and 4 years building a VC firm that invests in early stage SaaS companies. As a consultant, Judy helped 30 plus SaaS companies develop their go-to-market strategies and was acting CMO for companies including Zora, ServiceMax, and Conga. As an investor, Julie led proactive investment strategies and advised portfolio companies as a board member and observer. With Bela Ventures, Judy is selecting, advising, and investing in a new portfolio of successful early SaaS companies. So thank you so much, Judy, for joining us today. And thank you for all of those on the call. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Marian, for letting me present again to this community, and just want to say thank you to you and your entire team at Allraise for the work you're doing, because, I was going to try not to swear, but it's so important. Like, I can't, yes. No, whatever, off to a strong start. I'll re-say that in case for the recording you want a different version. It's really
no worries.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into this topic with you. Marian went over my background. I know 20 years in SaaS sounds like an exaggeration, but since I joined Salesforce in 2000, it's not. Since leaving the VC firm about 3 years ago, I have been working with many of the companies here on the bottom row, and I actually developed this presentation for them. So I'm happy to now share it with this wider audience. But the reason I shared it, I created it for them, is that having a nuanced understanding of your specific SaaS business model, I believe, is an important foundation that determines whether or not some companies make it and can help companies be more successful faster. So as you're looking at the agenda, I do want to pre-address one question. I saw from the list of registrants, there were a lot of questions around pricing and packaging. And I just want to mention that while I will touch on pricing and packaging, this presentation will not address all of the questions you have around pricing and packaging, which is one of the most strategic and hardest things SaaS companies wrestle with. So while I apologize in advance that I'm not going to be addressing all the questions I saw around pricing, having this business model knowledge and foundation will help inform your pricing and packaging. So think of it as a precursor session for pricing and packaging. Let's go ahead and jump in. So the reason, 4 specific reasons that the nuances of your business model are so important is first and foremost for planning. Thinking you're a different business model than you actually are can lead to some very time-consuming and costly mistakes, mostly around your product roadmap. And if you think about an early stage company, a tech company, your biggest cost items are your engineers and your product team. And so having your product team work even for a month or a quarter on features and new capabilities that aren't aligned with your business model are very, very costly and time-consuming mistakes. And I said a quarter. Most companies, I've seen a lot of companies who can actually meander in their product roadmap and having people working on things that aren't singularly going to be driving their growth or their customer success. Similarly, as you think about growth, how you're going to, what's the mix of your sales team? What sort of marketing programs are you going to run? What types of marketing team do you need to hire? Everything on your growth side as well is equally affected by your business models. So we're going to address all of these. And so now from a personal level, understanding your business model can also help you filter all the advice you get as founders. And it can also help you give better, if you're an investor, it can help you give better advice. So founders get advice from board members, investors, advisors, the person they sit next to on the bus, and every single piece of content out there. There's 10,000, hundreds of thousands, a million pieces of content out there giving people advice on how to build and grow their SaaS company. What universally, they think that there's a one-size-fits-all answer for SaaS, and there's not. So having an idea of your business model will help you filter that advice and see some articles, take some advice and go, that's nice. That doesn't apply to me. I don't even have to think about it right now. While other advice, when you realize, oh, that is relevant for my business model, now I will think carefully about that. And then finally, it can save your sanity. And there's a lot of, being a founder, being a CEO is so hard. And we talked about it all the time. We're like, God, I feel like such a failure. This other company I talked with is getting 1,000 or 10,000 signups a month. And I'm like, yeah, but they're all free. They're not generating any revenue. Who cares? You are getting 10 signups a month, and they're for 100,000 ACV deals each. So it's apples and oranges, and it's easy to focus on another company's really successful metric and feel inferior when in fact they'll be just as jealous of one of your metrics. So for all these reasons, let me just check in on a question here. Next slide. So my hope is that by the end of this session, you can help your companies, whether you're on the founding or an early member of a startup, or if you're an investor for your portfolio, that you can help them avoid mistakes, plan strategically, and grow most efficiently. Because all startup teams have limited resources, and the founders in All Raises community have even less resources. So it's even more important to be as efficient as possible. So people often think of SaaS as one monolithic business model, when really the only thing that all SaaS companies have in common are two things. They build their product so that it is accessed online, right? Whether that's through a mobile device, a computer browser, or somewhere else, the software is delivered online. And the second thing is that the software is monetized through some form of recurring revenue, whether that's monthly subscriptions, annual subscriptions, some usage-based recurring model, a combination of subscription plus services. There's a recurring aspect to the revenue. So really, online software and some sort of recurring revenue model are the only two things some SaaS companies have in common. There are actually more than these 5 business models, but I'm going to be focusing on these first 4. So enterprise SaaS. Think of companies like Workday that sell really big software for a really high price point. They might be selling it, well, Workday only sells to HR teams, but a lot of them have complex sales cycles. And, a company like Workday is sold across industries. Every company needs an employee system of record. So enterprise SaaS can be sold across multiple industries and generally has a higher price point and is sold to the enterprise, larger companies. Vertical SaaS is when a company is building a product for a specific industry. And therefore, in fact, selling into just a single market. Traditional SaaS, it's what most people think of. Probably started off selling to the SMB markets. Maybe then as they can add to enterprise as they add more functionality and can sell to a really wide set, horizontal set of companies. Freemium, it did become a joke a few years ago, and because it was wildly misused, and I feel like it's now being reborn as product-led growth. So everything we're going to talk about for freemium also applies to everything that people are really popularizing with product-led growth. It can be a great model if it's your authentic model, and if it's not, it can send you down a rat hole that bankrupts your business. And then open source. Open source, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. It has a lot of characteristics similar to the freemium and product-led growth, but it's really focused, really good fit if you're building products for a developer audience. Let me see if there are any questions. Marianne, feel free to interrupt if there are questions as we go.
Will do. The only thing that something came up is like there's a black background white noise. I don't know if that's from my end or yours, but just an FYI.
I'm sorry. I don't hear anything.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm going to try to troubleshoot it.
Okay. So the quickest answer is that your market and your product determine your ideal business model. You might have looked at that previous slide and said, yes, I want to be a product-led growth company, or I want to be an enterprise SaaS company, or I want to be this. And the reality is, it doesn't matter what we want or wish our business model was. And what's much more important is just understanding what the ideal business model is. And that's based on the market you're selling to and your product, and the combination of those two things. So your market is, who are you building your product for, and who are you selling it to? And what type of user at those customers uses your product? And how many companies are there? If you're selling a product to only 1,000 companies in the world, you should not try a business freemium approach. There simply aren't enough companies in the world for you to, do well. The other things, like what size companies are they? Are they big? Are they small? What's their spending? What's their propensity to spend? And just what's, the nature of these companies. So who you're selling to is your market. And part of your business model is determined by them, because it's really, how do they need to buy? How do they expect to buy? If you have a really simple product and you want to sell it to the enterprise, that's great. You can, but you have to also pay attention to what is their purchasing process like? And their purchasing decision-making process just fundamentally is more complex because there are more stakeholders involved. So the other part is your product. What is the main use case? How easy or hard is it for somebody to start using your product? Does it require a implementation by professional services implementation, or is it something somebody can just click through on their own and self-service setup? And then your price points. If you have a really low price point, that's something somebody could decide just to buy on their own and put on a credit card. If it's a really expensive price point, a bigger team is going to get involved. So these questions all determine your optimal business model. And we're going to go into things more to help you figure that out. But things that don't work are just jumping under a popular trend and copying others, and just starting off with one to see if it works, and then if not, moving on to the next one. Those all just lead to a lot of wasted time and money.
Judy, we do have one question from Nicole. Can you expand more on the differences between vertical SaaS and traditional SaaS?
Yes, and I'm going to expand a lot on each of those. So I have full slides. We're going to go into a lot of information on each one. I'm almost done with the preaching lecturing part.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I do want to share a couple cautionary tales, and I apologize to anybody associated with these companies, and this is all public information. So around 2013 or 2014, I almost spit out my coffee when I saw an article on TechCrunch or somewhere, I don't remember, I wish I had the link, talking about how MuleSoft was abandoning their freemium strategy. And it was the most shocking headline to me, because when I didn't know they had embraced or were trying a freemium strategy, but it was a perfect example of that company either got really, really bad advice or tried to copy somebody else's business model that wasn't a good fit for their market and their product. MuleSoft is fundamentally a SaaS integration solution that is used by IT teams to connect big, heavy systems to each other. And so there's nothing about MuleSoft's solution that any of us on this call would go, gosh, it's Saturday and we're in quarantine. Let me go just kick the tires on MuleSoft and play around with it and self-service set it up and just get this going on my own. We would only embark on an integration project if there was a business need and somebody, something pushing for this to be done. So MuleSoft should have never been a freemium product or had a freemium strategy. And they did suffer, a big waste of company resources and years to market. Now it's worked out for them. They since then have done well, but that was a very costly mistake for them. I have lots of other examples with companies I can't name of the company with a horizontal SaaS offering that can solve the needs of their SMB customers today, getting some bites or interest from really, really big companies, and all of a sudden thinking that they have a legitimate shot at those big enterprise deals and focusing too early on some of those really, really big enterprise customers when they simply don't have some of the product fundamentals that those customers will need. So it can lead to both a lot of wasted go-to-market cycles and also some product roadmap distortion, where all of a sudden you start building your product in a way that isn't necessarily the most efficient an optimal order to build your product. And then Barometrics also has a published blog post about their disastrous attempt with freemium. And so your cost structure, what is your cost structure for delivering your product, plays into this decision. Because they went into they shared a lot of information about how basically it was way too costly for them to support their free customers, both from a data sense and also because they're an analytics product, and from a customer support sense. So there are lots of cautionary tales out there that may not all be advertised as business model stories, but most of them are. So just a repeat, and we're going to go into a bunch of examples now. So now let's deep dive into each one. So traditional SaaS, what I mean by that. Traditional SaaS is what most people think of, right? Think of Salesforce back in the day, not necessarily, or how big they are today, but there's likely some sort of 30-day or 2-week or 1-week trial with monthly subscription options. And really the requirement is that the out-of-the-box product has to meet most of the customer's needs. And they're going after not just one specific industry, so not just pharmaceuticals or not just banking. They're trying to meet the 80-20 rule of meeting 80% of the functionality, 20% of the functionality for 80% of the companies out there. Some important things for traditional SaaS founders and investors and teams on the line that often get overlooked is it's really important to empower your product administrators if you have a traditional SaaS business, because with a traditional SaaS business, you don't want to have professional services holding everybody's hand for any change and update to your product. So you need to invest in tools for the product administrators at each company to do that so that you can scale. Typically, traditional SaaS business models have an inside sales team and are broken out by segments. Let's see, they, like I said, they usually start in the SMB and then grow into the enterprise over time. I remember at Salesforce, we were so excited when we got our first 100 user deal, and then Autodesk came along as the first 400 user deal. And that was, whoa, there's stuff we had to add to the product to be able to support that. So as we gradually added more capabilities, we were able to launch the enterprise edition and then start slowly going after larger and larger companies. So with traditional SaaS companies, there's often a free trial sign-up option. Doesn't have to be, but there often is. And leads come in from the website, sales will follow up on those, but it's also important to still have an outbound sales team. So the good news, the strengths of this are that everyone's familiar with it. It's sort of the de facto. And there are some things you can do around your pricing and packaging and payment terms to bring more cash up front when you have a strong product and the trust of your customers. Some of the downsides of this business model are that these days there are lots of competitors in each space. So there's a lot there. It's pretty easy for companies to switch from one product to another. If you think about a time tracking system, it's pretty easy to switch from one to another. An expense management system, not too high of a switching cost within an SMB. Even CRM, standalone CRM is a very easy product to switch because it's really just a list of your accounts, contacts, and opportunities. So what you need to do in order to not make it as easy for customers to leave you is create a lock-in strategy, and partnerships are a good way to do that. A few specific, just one or two specific integrations can really help there. So there are ways to overcome that. And then because these are relatively lower cost products, there may not have been as much thought that went into the decision to use them. And that can actually lead to post-sales problems with adoption, which can increase future churn rates. So if you know that, you just know that you need to, if you're a traditional SaaS company, really invest in the post-sale customer success machinery for your business to help get customers up to a high desired usage level. And then pricing and packaging is a really big thing here because depending on your price point, it might be hard to feed the sales team. So you need to, the market pressures affect how high you can price, but you also need to make sure not to price too low that you end up with a very unsustainable customer acquisition model. Check some of the questions.
No questions. No questions.
Okay. So I'm going to go next to the enterprise SaaS business model. So, there are similarities between all of these, but some of the differences are what people love about the enterprise SaaS business model is there's usually much higher price points, right? Which across who isn't going to love that? But the challenge that never comes for free. So the challenge with enterprise SaaS is that the buying decision, partly because you're dealing with an enterprise and partly because they need to justify their higher price points, is that the buying decision involves multiple teams and has much longer sales cycles. They might often require some professional services implementations and required integrations in order to even get up and running. And so as a result of all of this, there's typically no free trial because the product is really complex and not something that people are going to have a great first experience with if they were to just play around with a sample trial. They, even if somebody says, we are selling only to the enterprise, they're almost always selling to the enterprise and the mid-market. So, but they are very different segments. So it's important to break those out, and I'll come back and talk more about segmentation later. You may need sales engineers to support the sales reps because many sales reps in this segment are so focused on the relationships and helping the prospects get through their buying process that they don't become as adept at demoing your product. And you'll often have to have in-house implementation consultants, and maybe even you might have to think about change management, so it's helping the enterprise be successful and everything that entails. So the strengths are all great. It's a larger deal sizes. Once they're adopted, they're stickier. And it's for two reasons. One, they've done more work in their decision-making process up front and gotten the buy-in they need. And two, after they've done some integration work, it's actually a lot stickier and harder to rip out. so they can have lower churn rates. You do need to have a sales team, and that is a big investment for a company to make. And there are lots of different pricing mechanisms and pricing structures you can explore with for an enterprise SaaS company. Some of the challenges and differences with this is that obviously it's very expensive. You also sometimes usages, a lot of companies will focus on like, well, what's your average daily usage or average weekly usage or monthly usage? And sometimes some usage metrics matter more than others in the enterprise. So depending on the product, what you're offering, it could be offering incredible value that is only referenced, that the client only needs to reference or look at once or twice a week. And that can still be offering equivalent value to something else that somebody logs into 17 times a day. But so you have to just think carefully about what usage defines customers being successful with your product. Another challenge is when you lose one customer, God, it sucks and it hurts. Because everything just, you lose more revenue. And at the beginning, everything takes longer because you have to build a much more robust product to be able to support these customers. Okay, so now we're on to the freemium business model. Think of companies like Hootsuite, SurveyMonkey, Box, GroupIt. These companies, if you think about this list of companies, they have made it very, very easy for companies to just sign up and start using the product. And in 3 out of 4 of them, in SurveyMonkey's, Box, and GroupIt's cases, they have a natural virality to their product. For instance, I'm going to create a survey and I'm going to send it out, and every single survey I send out says powered by SurveyMonkey. Same thing for a group. I'm going to sign up, create a group, and invite everybody, and everybody knows they're joining a GroupIt group. So there's a natural virality to the use case in a lot of cases, but not all. Calendly is a great example, a natural virality to the use case. Hootsuite just did a great job of building an initial capability of, letting people who are already used to entering things into social media, they can now enter it into just one place in Hootsuite, use their scheduling tool, and Hootsuite would publish to multiple channels at once. So it was a time-saving value. So all these companies have done a really good job by offering a free edition that lets people use it for this one specific or narrow use case for free. And they would not be successful if they put up any roadblocks in that process. So it really has to be frictionless. Other characteristics for freemium SaaS to be successful is that customers have to be able to auto-convert and start paying for a slightly higher edition on their own. It doesn't mean all will, and it doesn't mean they all have to. And if you want to have a product-led or a freemium SaaS business, you have to make sure that they can do those things and also not expect that they all will. And you have to be prepared to support your free edition users for life, and with a very low cost structure. So support by email only, a lot of online content. And then for most companies, they still need to hire an inside sales team to help some companies upgrade and to go outbound and help, more companies use their product. So really ease of use and cost structure matter a ton in SaaS. I had a client about 9 years ago that had a product which is they're out of business now, but that was most similar now to actually what SalesLoft has. And they did not have, it was not possible to get their product set up self-service. They had something had to be integrated to the website and connected to your email system. And there were these setup things that a marketing user would have needed help with. And they had a cost structure. They had collected a lot of data about website visitors. So they had a higher product delivery cost structure, but they had a board member who kept telling them that they should be more like Hootsuite. And there's a lot of pressure back in like 2011 or 2012, maybe, to be more like Hootsuite, which was really disastrous advice for this company. And they kept trying to figure out how to offer their product for free when it would have bankrupted them. They didn't even end up doing it, but the amount of cycles they spent trying to figure out how to do that was time they could have been spent, on their on a more valuable product roadmap. It's the nicest way I can put it. So the benefits of the freemium SaaS business model are that you can, by having such both a free and a low cost product, make your product available to businesses all over the world. And they can just sign up and start using it. And that's amazing. And then gradually, it takes time though. Like it's very rarely is it instantly you have enough cash to do anything. You often don't. So you need to be prepared for the fact that the cash flow takes a long time to follow. So, but where you have a natural virality, you can get a great flywheel effect. So then you do spend less on leads. So some of the challenges is really comes down to pricing and packaging, making sure that your free edition makes a user completely successful without cannibalizing your higher priced products, higher priced editions. And also making sure that you are able to instrument your product and your usage so you really understand which customers are able to use you successfully. Just double check for questions.
Judy, we have two from Shelley. Do you have any examples of enterprise sales that have low priced pilots? And what about selling enterprise to government at below threshold price points to speed up procurement?
Perfect. So yes, let's go back to enterprise. I love for the enterprise segment, and I'm going to include government. Selling to the government is as hard as selling to the enterprise. Focusing on that and getting as smooth as a possible early landing process, just to get your foot in the door, even if it was just with a single team within an enterprise or for just a first piece of your product. Getting over that hump of them being a customer, no matter how small, is a huge deal accelerator, because it changes everything from hypothetical to how they could hypothetically use you to, oh, they're already using you in this specific way and they could expand in these other ways, but it gives you that foothold that's really, really important. So if for the enterprise, I think it can be a very successful strategy to almost have a loss leading pilot or a loss leading first piece of your product that gets you in the door. Because even just getting that foot in the door can help it doesn't preclude you from getting the bigger deal. And can shorten the overall time it takes to get that bigger deal.
Got it. And then one more question from Diane. Can you speak at some point to when to transition a customer from free trial to a paid model?
The answer, probably won't be surprised, is very different based on which business model. So is this for selling to the SMB or selling to enterprises, or what type of?
It's not specific. Oh, SMB.
Okay, to the SMB. So switching from a free trial. So the question is when to switch from a free trial to a paid version of a traditional SaaS product to the SMB. I think it really comes down to, for the SMB, the biggest problem with free trials is people will sign up but then not log in and do anything, right? So it's nice to be able to offer the free trial, but it's not the end all be all. So sometimes stretching out a free trial longer and longer and longer doesn't actually achieve your goals, because it's just giving them more and more time to drag their feet and not do anything. A lot of companies, at least, I don't know, 5-7 years ago, started off with a 30-day trial for everything. And then a lot of companies found that it was better to shorten it to a 14-day or a 7-day. And really, while the reason they signed up for your trial in the first place is still top of mind, focus more of the sales effort and trying to reach them in those conversations in that upfront time. Another reason why sometimes shorter is better is you might offer 30 days or think you're being nice by offering a longer free trial, and your competitors might offer a shorter time, and accelerate a customer through their buying cycle faster. So you're actually giving competitors more time to get in there. Now, there's a big difference between like what your default free trial time is and having the option to extend it. So if you're selling to an SMB that's a really important prospect for you, then, probably plan on a slightly shorter free trial, but you always have the option if that prospect is actually engaging with you and just saying, we just need more time, I want to bring in somebody else and whatever, they have a good reason, and you then, I'd say I'm happy to extend it for you for 1 week. So there's what you publish and do, and then like there's what you can enable your teams to make exceptions for, is how I would think about that. Okay, I'm going to go to the last one, which is the vertical SaaS business model. So vertical SaaS companies are those like Veeva, who started off building a CRM product, for which at that time there were other CRM products, but specifically for pharmaceutical sales. And pharmaceutical companies, because of their heavy compliance requirements, couldn't use any of the horizontal CRM products like Salesforce out there. So Veeva was started to solve some of the compliance specific requirements around pharma sales, and originally intended to go do the same thing for other industries, but there ended up being such a big market and they were able to do so well selling just to pharmaceutical and life sciences companies that they have just doubled and tripled down and quadrupled down on that market as a vertical SaaS business. So in order to do that, you have to really for all of these, you have to really understand your market and your buyers. And for vertical SaaS, it's the highest need to understand the specific complexities, compliance requirements, nuanced workflows, everything for your market, because that's what you're ultimately going to have to build and solve for them. If you were to come out and say, I'm going to build an accounting software system just for this one industry, but if that industry doesn't have any unique or different needs than what they could be solved by QuickBooks or Xero, it's very unlikely your new industry-specific accounting solution is going to be successful, because there are other horizontal solutions that are likely cheaper that they could use. So a couple things on other things to mention on vertical SaaS is you are selling to a very known universe of prospects. You are not selling to the whole world. And that's a really, really good thing, I think. From a structure perspective, you still need to break out the sizes. Even though you're selling to just one industry, they're not all equal. There's usually a really big difference between there's not such thing as like a small financial services institution, or a small pharma company. So vertical SaaS tends to skew more enterprise, but no, that's not true. There are a lot of companies. I know of a lot of vertical specific, say CRM companies selling to property managers who need to manage multiple real estate properties or apartment buildings. It's a different type of functionality. So there are just as many vertical SaaS companies selling to the SMB, but they're usually one or the other. So the strengths of a vertical SaaS model is that you get to focus and you get to build exactly what your one industry needs and do it very, very well. Another benefit is you can buy a list of every single company in your target vertical. And when you make one customer successful, word of mouth is more likely to spread to your others. You can usually charge more than a horizontal equivalent product, because you're meeting their industry specific challenges. And so higher price points. But each of these things can also backfire in vertical SaaS. So that positive word of mouth within your industry, when you are only selling to a finite world of companies and the people who work in those industries move around to companies in that industry. So the word of mouth follows. So if you have great word of mouth, it is so helpful and word travels. If you screw up a customer and have bad word of mouth, that will follow you for a long time as well. So negative word of mouth is extra challenging with vertical SaaS. But if you know that, you can plan in advance to just have amazing customer success to, protect yourself from that. The other thing is with vertical SaaS, it's really important that you're thinking about long-term product roadmap, because You're going to have your first product meets their needs, and you'll add to it over time so your product get more robust, and that's product A. And that's what you'll go sell to as many of these companies in your industry as you can. But 5 years from now, you don't get to double your market by going and selling to another industry. Instead, you have your finite world of companies in your market, and you need to figure out what is the second product that you can now go sell to your customers to increase revenue from this existing market and your existing install base. So product strategy, don't worry about it in the first few years, but long-term product strategy and your multi-product strategy is very, very important for vertical SaaS companies. Okay, so now just a few more slides that we'll go through quickly, and then we'll have some time for questions at the end. So pricing and packaging. These things at the top apply to all of them. Philosophically, when you're doing pricing and packaging for a SaaS company, the two things I'll leave you with are, one, always focus on right sizing. Whatever packages or additions you come up with, it should be right sized for somebody, one of your segments. And make sure that that addition is designed to make your target, whoever it's designed for, to be completely successful. They should always have the choice to upgrade to a higher edition if their circumstances change and they need it, or if they then get more mature and they want to take advantage of some more advanced functionality. But it should never be because they're so starved in their current edition that they can't be successful, because you could lead to negative word of mouth. And the other thing is to take a step back and think about what are the levers, the pricing levers that authentically map, for your product, that map to customer value. Sometimes that's number of users. Sometimes that's number of servers. Sometimes that's, you have software for retail that would be based on number of stores. It's what is your unit of value, and as much as possible, try to map your pricing to that. So I have a few notes here for different things to think about depending on the your type of business model. I've already hit on lots of these. One thing I'll mention is enterprise SaaS companies likely won't list your price publicly because there are likely a lot of variables, right? And because you want to support a land and expand strategy, you might not want to scare somebody off with your really big future all-in price point when they could start smaller. Another thing that I learned from one of my portfolio companies is to pre-negotiate, when possible, to pre-negotiate your contract terms to make future account expansion so much easier. So even if she was only selling 5 users at first for her software to very, very large enterprises, she invested a lot of time, and it slowed her sales cycle down. But in that first just 5-user deal, to get all the language in the contract that made all future additional users just an order that went through with never a need to go back to their procurement teams again. And so that allows her, she's doing that upfront work on the landing deal that makes her future expansion a lot easier. Freemium, one thing I will point out here is that it is still important, even if you're a product-led or freemium business, to still have an outbound sales team going out there and selling to companies, because that's how you're going to control your own fate on revenue. Freemium companies can be great on leads, but it takes a long time for that revenue to follow, and you need some revenue. So some pricing examples, like if you're a traditional SaaS product, just everyone's used to the grids. Sometimes there's even some simple even some light visual differentiation in what you end up presenting as oh, here's our light edition, our essential edition for small businesses who want to fill in the blank for your company, versus these two heftier products that are designed professional for mid-sized teams, ready to do this and this more thing, and then enterprise. So I'm not saying your pricing must be based on number of users. Like I said, there are lots of different pricing levers, just one example, but there are a few different things. It's not always just what functionality goes in each bucket. Sometimes there are user caps or a minimum number of users. You can also think about how long they get access to the data, if that's important for your business. Quite a few different things. I see some questions.
Yes, there are a few. What could be the advantages and disadvantages between signing contracts with mid-sized businesses versus pay per use of the SaaS solution?
So there's probably one that is better for each company based on, well, pay per use will probably help you land more quickly because, gosh, they don't have to think about costs, right? They get to just start using it. And so while some companies like that upfront, when you get to selling to more enterprises, even though you're selling a pay per use, which seems like it should just be easy for them to start, a lot of them still won't start without a full understanding of what the future costs will be. And when they see that, you're effectively in the same thing as if you're pre-negotiating a contract. So pay per use can only get you revenue after the fact, while an upfront contract could include some prepayment terms that get you revenue earlier. It's one thought. There's another question here about, have you heard of budget or revenue-based pricing? A small percentage of the price to be more aligned with the customer's business. I have, it's common, but it needs to be used where the thing you're pricing, the thing you're selling is directly correlates with that cost function. So Zuora invoicing for subscription businesses, and it's a billing and rating and payments and everything. So because it is billing and pricing for subscription products, and there really are, without them, teams of extra people in sales ops and revenue operations doing X, Y, and Z things that are then automated by Zuora, there is that direct cost on, like, because finance teams already have a known direct cost association with how much it costs to process this much revenue. They can do that, have that percentage of. But going after saying, on marketing, sometimes it doesn't work. Well, you have this big of a marketing budget, and so we're going to charge this percentage of it. That can be trickier. So it just really depends on what the product is. And I see another question around any great examples of hardware as a service pricing models, like Peloton, Ring, others, including, so I think of this as the hardware. Yeah, so hardware plus the subscription. Those are both B2C examples. So I know there are B2B examples out there, often more in the security side, where it's like a server being installed for a cybersecurity type product with some sort of subscription monitoring. Those are possible. It is a unique business model that I don't have covered in this deck, but think of it needs to be thought of as its own. If you have a hardware plus software offering, that is a unique business model that needs all the same sort of level of breakdown and consideration. Okay, one more question. Any thoughts on digital healthcare companies and the use of ARR models, especially when the product you are building also has per user licensing, such as the Microsoft Power Apps platform? So I see this as getting into your cost structure, right? So if there is a cost structure for your platform, if that's the Microsoft Power Apps platform, if that's your cost structure, obviously your licensing, your subscriptions on top of that have to give you a good margin for your software. Where there is a client that is required to buy something else in addition to using your sales team and your go-to-market team just have to understand that buying you isn't just this big decision. It is this bigger price point consideration for the customer because they're required to buy this other product first. And you just have to plan your go-to-market timing, expected sales discussions, and everything accordingly. So a few more slides I want to make sure to get through in this time. Here's another example. If you're a freemium company, you could, just simply show like, over here, you get this for free. And at any time you can upgrade on your own to this cheap edition. But by the way, totally separately, we also offer a product for bigger companies. And that's what sales would go sell. if you were to do this, one tip I've learned is to really keep sales incented and only letting them get comped on the higher products. Otherwise, you can have sales reps who end up spending way too much time on a $10 deal. Now, financial models and your sales models are another thing to think about as that are adjusted based on your business model. So universally, whenever possible in your business model and your sales model, you want to embrace segmentation. You want to have segments. I don't believe in our average sales cycle is this long for the whole business and our average deal size is this big for the whole business, because you're going to have a few unique segments within there, and by averaging them, you're losing the important nuance. So if you are a freemium business, you likely have 3 segments. You have your free customers that sign up and maybe auto convert, and then you have the enterprise inside sales, doing the sales team doing their outbound sales. And then in the future, when you have something that could support an enterprise sale, then you could add an enterprise sales team as well. For traditional SaaS, you might have SR teams qualifying leads and passing them over to sales. Not a requirement, but depending on the lead flow, you might. And you probably have both when you're selling just to SMB, just an inside sales team doing outbound sales. And then in the future, to the enterprise, you need reps who know how to help prospects through their procurement process. Enterprise, even if somebody says we're selling out of the enterprise, they're selling to the enterprise and the mid-market. So there will be 2 different segments, and the deal sizes will be very different. And for vertical SaaS, same thing. You want to think about building your model with a land and expand. How do you get the first product in there, and how do you expand either to higher editions and multiple products over time? Now, what's great with any SaaS business is that you can show your team, your investors, others, if you figure out your good land and expand model, how you can start with a customer buying just a smaller amount, and then they can grow the account by any of your pricing levers, and you can think about how much more you could penetrate that account in the future for revenue. So you can think about like the growth within customers. So it's especially important in the enterprise, but I think it's actually important in all sizes. Then similarly, this graph is especially important for business freemium and traditional SaaS, but once again, I think it's important for all of them. Is you want to think in terms of your cohorts. Within each cohort of everybody that signed up in July 2012, it's an old graph, did that cohort over time become more valuable financially or less valuable? This is what the graph looks like when every cohort becomes more valuable. So say in this example, and I have to credit Joe Floyd from Emergence for this slide. Say 100 companies signed up in one of these months, and over time, 10 of them might have churned. Yes, it could happen. But over time, the remaining 90 maybe upgraded or added 3 seats or did something else over time, so that cumulatively over time, when you bring on customers, that cohort gets more valuable to your business over time. If you have data like this, create a slide like this and investors will like it. And if you have a sales cycle like this, create a slide like this, investors will like it.
Judy, one quick clarification, ACV, what does that stand for?
Annual contract value. Basically, just like how much is this cohort or does a company pay you on an annual basis?
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, this last slide, marketing is also affected by business models. And if you are a business freemium or product-led growth company, marketing is out there, getting the word out, promoting your free thing and driving a lot of leads and signups. If you are a vertical SaaS company, marketing should not be out there doing demand gen programs. I'm sorry, let me clarify. If you're a vertical enterprise, so if you're a vertical enterprise company, marketing should not be out there doing a lot of demand gen and lead gen campaigns, because you are selling to such a finite group of companies with people at them who are going to be your prospects forever, regardless of which company they go to, that you need to have a very, very high quality, high touch process with them that should not involve spamming them with lots of emails and throwing out lots of content at them to see what sticks. So your marketing mix, what team, the mix of who you hire for marketing and what skills you need are different based on your business model. With enterprise SaaS and vertical, and they're more enterprise, marketing is there to provide credibility and support to the enterprise sales process. While the more SMB you're focused on, marketing is there to drive more leads. That is the last slide, and I'm happy to, really it's just a recap for everyone to think about themselves on their business model, revisit any of the strategies that are impacted by our business model, which, let's face it, are all of them: product strategy, sales strategy, marketing strategy, and hopefully start to see more positive, a bigger impact from each of the things you're doing. And that really was the last slide. So happy to answer any questions.
Yes, I think Nicole had asked, can we do licensing under a vertical SaaS business model or have to do monthly subscription?
So yeah, so you don't have to do monthly subscriptions, and licensing can mean different things in different cases, but fundamentally, if your software is available online and you are making it available, a subscription is just one type of license. And it could be, and you can also, okay, let me back up. There's how you charge and what your payment terms are, and two different things. So licensing or subscription, you want some sort of recurring revenue plan, and you can choose to make it available, let customers pay monthly, quarterly, annually. And you can choose to let them subscribe or pay for your products in a narrowed use way, such as by users or for specific areas of the functionality, or you could offer them a site-wide license. Well, I would caution off selling on a site-wide license too early, because early on, I've advised some companies who have really, really powerful software, and a huge company will come in and be like, we just want to give you a lot of money right now to license this whole thing, almost before the founder can even understand how much more it could be monetized for. And this founder is literally locked into supporting this massive customer where her product is adding, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to the bottom line. And she is supporting it forever for the equivalent of $120,000 a year. When it's, I'm not exaggerating, a $2 million a year product. So offering a site-wide license, if you do that, you want to still scope it down enough so it's your current product and not automatically inclusive of everything you might build in the future.
And there's one more question as we close out. Do you have any book or blog recommendations to learn more about SaaS metrics, tactics, and strategy?
I don't, because they all have the same fundamental flaw, which is failing to preface what the advice they give through the lens of a business model. So that's why it's hard for me to recommend one, because they all blur the lines. And we'll have one chapter that's great advice for a traditional SaaS and a different chapter that's relevant for a business freemium, and they just shove it all together in one book. I'm trying to think. I really don't, because literally that's my problem with all of the content out there.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Judy. Those were all the questions that came in. And I'm looking, we're right at time, which is perfect. Thank you again for sharing. Everyone has been saying great things in the chat. So it's always a pleasure to have you on. I do want to tell everyone, we do have the next event is next week. Next Wednesday, which is developing your go-to-market positioning. Please check out the website to join us. Thank you. There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
So please sign up. We'd love to see you all again. And yeah, we have a feedback survey also coming out. So we appreciate all of your feedback. It's always very helpful. And we read through those, which help us build out future events. And then you can see also in December, we have our enterprise SaaS workshop, SaaS partnership strategy. So definitely check in. And as a reminder, this will be up on our website tomorrow for your reference, recording and video. And so, yeah, we hope that you are all able to check that out and reference it. Thank you again, Judy, for your time. This has been great. And thank you for everyone who joined us today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. All right. Let me stop recording.